So yes, quickly I'll start about a brief introduction about myself, very quick. My name is Sarika, and I am a special educator by profession. I'll definitely tell you what's the role of a special educator when we come to that slide. I am a founder of Life of a Special Educator. I'm located in Mumbai, and I'm practicing from an area in Mumbai called as Kandivali. I've been in this profession for the past 13 years. You can follow my work on Insta on I am Sarika31, or you can follow my work on Facebook, Life of a Special Educator. And I'm in this field for past 13 years. Prior to becoming a special educator, I was an IT professional. I had a very successful career for around 8 or 9 years. And probably I always say that it was God's will that, I come in this profession because I had absolutely no connection with autism. In fact, while I was studying special education, this was one paper in which I flunked. I was doing multiple disabilities. And when they said that, there's a paper on autism and then a test was taken, I flunked in that. And I know why I flunked in that, because probably I was of the same opinion that you parents are who've got a fresh diagnosis about autism. I was with the same mindset that whenever there is a tag of disability, it has to be a physical impairment. So either I should see some physical impairment to say that the child has disability. Now, in our school, in the college where we were studying, they did show us a couple of students having autism. And whenever I observed them, they had no deformity. The only thing it looked like they were lost in their own world, but rest, they were walking and they were moving. And I really couldn't connect with autism. I thought, kya hai ye? And so when I had this, and I'm very experiential learner. I want to experience things and learn, experience, think and learn. But when I couldn't understand what is autism, and that's why when I had a class test, I failed in that. My real U-turn came in my life because I've done my special education in multiple disabilities. I was given a choice what I want to pick for my career. And it so happened that coincidentally, I went to US, and there for 4 years, I worked in an autism intervention program at the classroom, right? 4 years I was with them. And that's where, my dear friends, I got to see the beauty of autism. Who are they beyond what we see them, and that opened a new world for me. And trust me, when I take my remedial sessions, that's what a special educator does. The therapy that she gives is called as remedial education. And when I take my remedial therapies for my children in the spectrum, trust me, after every session, I should feel tired. But after every session, I feel so energetic. Each of my children, they bring a uniqueness when they come to me. Okay, I will share if we get time that when we say that, emotionally they don't express things, I don't believe, because the way they fill my bucket by not saying things that a regular person would say, like, hi, Jenny, you're so beautiful, I love you. They don't say things like that, but then non-verbal ways just fill your bucket, and it motivates me every day to work with them. So you can say that it's my passion to work with the children in the spectrum. Now let's see what we can take from our today's evening. Yeah, understanding autism. So to start with, autism term comes from the Greek word et autos. Autos meaning self. So the term literally means alone. The condition can be diagnosed even before 18 months and definitely by 2 years of age. Yeah. So many a times when you get diagnosis and you say, "Arey, achanak se 7 years mein." Okay, by the way, everybody comfortable with English or Hindi? English, raise your digital hand.
English.
English
English.
is okay.
Yeah.
English is okay. Anybody for not English, raise your hand. Okay, I think everybody okay with English. Then in that case, I'll go for English. Good, my parents taught me 2 languages. So yeah. So that's what you mean by the word autism. So just knowing the meaning, doesn't it bring a huge impact in us that autism itself means auto, alone. Yeah, they literally want to stay alone. And what are we asking them to do? Mingle, play, sit with us. Now, we are not wrong in that. But what they originally want is leave me alone. Yeah. Now, can you see, this is an art. Whoever joined first earlier, they might have seen Chaitra joining for 2 minutes. And Vedant was sitting next to her. This is an art done by Vedant. Vedant, I think, just turned 5. And this is almost a year and a half Vedant did this drawing. You all can recognize that this is Peppa Pig and the entire family, right? This was the time when Vedant, I don't think he spoke a lot. His major expression was drawing that time. And this is what came, this is what he made. This is another drawing made by one of my students in the US. This was a farewell gift to me. Now, can you believe this drawing is made by marker pens without any reference, without erasing once? And can you look at the accuracy? These are the Powerpuff Girls. So, not all, but many have some talent or the other. In fact, there are many people they say that if autism was not there, the autistic population, they like to say that if there was no autism, there wouldn't have been any inventions. That's what they like to claim, which I totally do not deny, because they do think differently. Yeah. So not necessary every child has superpowers. Even autistics want us to understand that, please, when you see a child with autism, don't think iske paas kya superpower hai. Aisa nahi hai. But yes, some of them are gifted. They might have different gifted skills. Not always drawing, but it could be something else. Yeah. Understanding autism. So yes, Eugene Bleuer, as a psychiatrist, he came up with this. Yeah. Understanding autism. What is autism spectrum disorder? It's a neurological condition, right? So when I say, and let's read this first. Autism, now called autism spectrum disorder, is a complicated condition that includes problems with communication and behavior. Okay, it includes a wide range. We all know when your child got a diagnosis, either they would have said that it's mild or it's moderate level of autism, it's severe or profound. Okay, so there are different levels of autism. Now, how does it help? So when a therapist works with your child, they might always ask you this question. Okay, you have a diagnosis of autism. Would you help us know the severity of it? Now, what does this severity help a therapist know? To decide the functionality of the child and how to help the child. So that is what is the only thing this severity helps. And of course, the child's learning and cognition also depends on the severity level the child is at. Okay, they have problems with communication. They have difficulty understanding what other people think. I will specifically highlight on this point because as parents, I really want you all to understand. People keep on saying difficulty in understanding what other people feel. But what exactly is that? Yeah. It, of course, and that's why they cannot understand gestures or facial expressions and touch. So, as simple as I don't know what, we are from different generations, but I remember in my generation, for my generation, when we used to go to somebody's house and, there were cookies and everything laid on the plate. And if we wanted to eat, we would look at our mother. And if mother slightly gives a nod like this, then we knew that, it's right enough for us to eat the cookies. So what was that? There was an unspoken, probably I was only 4 then or 3 then. But I had learned this, that, when I want to eat a cookie, I want to look at my mother. And when my mother gives me a slight hidden nod, I can have that cookie. Now, a child in the spectrum, you cannot expect such things that they can understand these gestural prompts. So what are these called as gestural prompts? Forget gestural prompts. Even a child in the spectrum, if you say, don't do this, at the age of 3 and 4, probably they might not even understand or comprehend when you say, don't do this, right? So that is something that you need to understand, that they have this innate quality. They are like that. And that doesn't make them good or bad. Yeah, problems with autism might have, people with autism might have problems with learning. Yes, and their skills develop unevenly. Now, how would you know their skills develop unevenly? Simple, right? As parents, we see, वो बाजू वाली के 4 साल की बच्ची ये करती है, मेरा बच्चा ये नहीं करता, right? Those are our signs. If we don't have any other child in our house to compare, and that's quite natural. That's the place where you would go for. Also, when we say unevenly, what happens is generally when you see a neurotypical child is somebody who does not have autism. So when a neurotypical child is growing up, you would see that there are stages that he will sit, then he will crawl, and then he will walk, and then he will say ba, 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 and then he will talk. Now, probably in a child with spectrum, after you got the diagnosis, and many of you might have experienced, when we take this parent intake cases, they all say, 2 साल तक बोलता था, देखता था, twinkle, twinkle, little star बोलता था, मुझे eye contact देता था, फिर अचानक बंद कर दिया. This is a typical sign. This is the onset of autism. This is how it happens. Now, as I said, that the autism diagnosis can be given at by 18 months also. And that's possible if your pediatrician is very, very sharp eyes to see the contacts, to see the signs that gives you the diagnosis. So one thing why I'm sharing this point, that if parents have any kind of guilt, कि हमने कुछ गलत कर दिया वो 2 साल में, something went wrong from our side. हम अगर ये सही करते, हम अगर उसको टीवी कम दिखाते, अगर हम उसके साथ खेलते, हमने उसको ये खाने का दे दिया, these are the most common things that people think that, that could lead to autism. Let me tell you, my dear friends, there is still no study that says what is the real reason for autism. And autism is a neurological condition. What do you mean by a neurological condition? Neurological condition is that something that is related to your nerves, your brains. You are born with a neurological condition, right? So if in case you're still having that doubt, कि मैंने कुछ गलत कर दिया क्या? Somewhere I fell short as a mother or father, and that led to autism. Let me tell you, please help yourself come out of the guilt. Yeah. So it's a neurological condition. That is something that you all need to understand. Yeah. As I said, my first reason that they resemble typically, with the developing child, and then many of us get confused. I shared a very good example, right? Even while I was doing my special education, I flunked because I couldn't make a difference. For me, it was a shocker. Now, how does this look like for parents? I have parents here with whom I work and talk, and they tell me, because your child looks so normal in the terms of the layman term, they look normal, that when you go out in society, what is the first comment you get to hear? आपके बच्चे को autism है, एकदम normal दिखता है. And that's where, you feel so low. See, even my neighbor that my son looks normal, but still my child has autism. But then remember, the name autism means autos, the Greek word autos. They like to stay alone. It's a communication and behavior disorder, period. There is no deformity in their body. Yeah. You need to accept that, and you need to make the society aware of that rather than getting affected by yourself. Anyways, I know you all might be saying, Sarika, it's easier said and done, but we have one leg in our presentation where we will see that if you can try to change wherever you are currently to a higher level. Yeah. Now look at this. We all know that, right? Inappropriate laughing or giggling. Now, when I'm giving these characteristics, not every single child possesses the same, but many of these you can see in different ways or the other, they have these characteristics. So why am I mentioning these characteristics? For you to know that, look, there is no behavior issue with my child. He's doing something like that because he has autism. No real fear of dangers. You might have seen, right? Jump karna. Sometimes they hit their head on the wall. They bite themselves many a times. Apparent insensitivity. Gir jayenge. Many a times, you see somebody falling down. A child falls down in the spectrum. Instead of crying, the child is laughing. Or even if you touch that child slightly and, it didn't even hurt the child might be howling. So there are various combinations. May not want cuddling. Yeah. Many of my children who come for therapy, some of them like to cuddle, some of them they don't like to cuddle. Sustained, unusual or repetitive play. So if you, now this I particularly want to mention to you all, when this sustained, unusual, repetitive play, uneven physical or verbal skills, there are many children who might be doing something like this. You end up seeing them doing that. swirling. They might have a top they like to spin. They might have a thread they like to do that. You all might be aware, but I would like to mention it's called as stimming. It's called as stimming. Now, stimming is something which is more of their biological need. It is more of a relaxant for them. Now, I want all of you to imagine that how stimming might be soothing a child in the spectrum. And generally, you see stimming comes when they are alone. Stimming shows when they are very excited. Stimming also shows when they are very sad or anxious, right? Now, how to experience, what do we do? Now, let's say if my hands are tied up. Now, this I say in most of my trainings. My hands are tied up, right? And I experience itching here. Now, it is such that, I'm experiencing itching here, but my cheek cannot touch my shoulder. How am I experiencing that time? I have a beautiful desert in front of me, but my hands are tied up. There is nobody in the room. I cannot rub at this place. There's a constant itching and there's a very tasty desert in front of me. Now, going back to your past experience, what you would say, you will not even care about the desert. What is the first thing you would like to relieve is this itch, isn't it? Do you all agree with me that this is the first thing we will like to get it sorted out? And that is how they feel if we ask them to stop stimming. So if they are doing this and we say stop, what are we taking away from them? That the satisfaction that we get, that if somebody just itches our cheeks that time. So we are depriving them of that. So I know there are some societal norms because of which that is not accepted. But yes, we can train our children as they grow up. I remember a very, very good example of a 6th grader in the US we were in a regular school and he used to go to regular classes and then come back to the resource room. I still remember that being a 6th grader, this was his habit of stimming. So what we told him that when you want to stim, put your hand under the table and do the stimming. We didn't stop the stimming for him. Now, because that was his need, we couldn't stop him. Now, what was the reason for this? See, he was with his peer 6th grader, neurotypical. Now, when he does this, the entire class looks at him and probably he might be bullied. But when he does under the table, he's trained to do under the table, there are only a couple of people who are sitting around can see that. So we did that for social inclusion. That's the only reason. We had nothing against the stimming. Yeah. Now, people who have attended my training, this is how I perceive autism. And see if it works for you all as well. Now, I perceive in this way that, if we all, how many of us are here? 20 of us. All of us are neurotypical. We have no diagnosis of autism. We have no diagnosis of autism. Now, imagine if we are made to sit in a spaceship and we are sent to Mars and we are greeted by Martians. Can Martians understand the language? No. If we go and hug them, they might just shoot us. They might not understand it's an expression of love. Yeah. If we take the tastiest desserts from our earth and give it to them, they might not even enjoy the taste of it. Now, what is the reason? On earth, we are extremely intelligent, capable humans on earth. But the minute we go to Mars, we are strangers. We don't even know how to behave with them. They don't know how to accept us. And how do they treat us? Because Martians are more, they say, okay, you 20 people start learning our tricks. This is the way we say hello. This is the way we cuddle. This is what we eat. These are the social norms, isn't it? Just close your eyes for a second and imagine. Won't we be forced to learn their norms and ways? This is exactly the same thing we are doing with the autistic population here on earth itself. My dear friends, autism is not a disease. Disease वो चीज होता है कि मेरा ये कट गया, आपने वहां पे बैंडेड लगा दिया या ड्रेसिंग कर दिया and it starts healing. Autism is a personality type, right? Like we have a shy person, we have an introvert person, we have an extrovert person. We also have an autistic person. Can we start considering them as a personality? Now, I do not deny that because we are in majority, for their survival, they will have to learn our norms. But remember, they are from a different personality. If we go on Mars, it will be difficult for us to learn the Martian ways. Similarly, it will be difficult for them to learn our ways. Nevertheless, we still have to train them. And that's the reason the need for all these therapists to help you get through that goal. But why I'm sharing this part? Because once you start looking, parents, once you start looking at them as a different personality type, you know what comes? Acceptance starts creeping in. Because then you cannot compare with a peer of his age and say, वो भी 7 साल का है, वो ये काम करता है, मेरा बच्चा 7 साल का है, वो नहीं करता. क्यों? आपका बच्चा एक दूसरे पर्सनालिटी का बच्चा है. One thing you have to remember कि if the right therapies are given at the right time, okay, there are chances that your child might bridge that gap. There are so many successful autistic people around the globe who are now writing books. And when you listen to their books and documentaries and videos, and when they share about their childhood, the one thing you thought, oh my God, if I was a therapist, I would have never imagined कि इसका भविष्य ऐसा था, or this is how his future is going to be. So my dear friends, one thing you can have is hope. And I'm not giving you false hope. I'm saying that have hope. We don't know how these beautiful minds work and what they learn. But one most important thing for them is therapy. Now, again, I want to repeat, because I'm a therapist, please don't think that I have any vested interest in sharing about therapies. You know, my hands are full. I'm working good. There's nothing that I earn from, telling you all that therapies work. I'm sharing with you all because every day I see therapies working in front of me. Every day I see children growing. And what happens at the end, when I see children growing, you know what I see? I see happy parents. When I see happy parents, it's an entire happy family. So that's my only reason for telling you all that therapy works. The earlier, the better. And that's why we call it as early intervention. Early intervention generally starts from, the minute you get the diagnosis till 7 years, it's called as the golden period. And that's when the intervention given, it works the best. Now you might question, why, Sarika? Somebody might say that brain has neuroplasticity, Sarika. We can teach it, and we can teach them anytime. You're absolutely right. Our brain has neuroplasticity. Anytime we can teach our children. But what works different is, it's a pyramid, right? जैसे जैसे base strong होगा, ऊपर का pyramid भी strong होता जाएगा. Now what happens? What challenges we face in our therapies? A child brought to special ed at the age of 4 years versus a child brought at the age of 7 years. These 3 years, there are high chances that the kids might have learned the concept the wrong way. Now, when I say wrong way, I'll give you real life experiences where parents come and they tell me that, Sarika, मेरे बच्चे को सब आता है. My child does amazing counting. He can recognize 1 to 100. A 4-year. Since he was 3 years, any number you show, he will point out at those numbers and he will give you the answers, That's what parents say. The sad part is when you are testing the child, because the child knows 1 to 100, he can even count. Okay, you give him 20 objects, the child will properly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, till 20. The unfortunate part is, in spite of doing all this, when you ask the child, can you give me 3 pieces? And that's where your child does not know how to respond. So that is the major flip side, which parents, they fail to understand that that's not learning. You see, my dear friends, children in the spectrum are very good visual learners. Things taught to them visually, most of the time sticks for a longer time with them. That doesn't mean anything that they are comprehending what is being taught to them. Now, because they perceive world differently, they need a different way to be taught. And that's the reason your therapists come in place, because they have been trained to teach them differently. Now, what are the therapists you are looking at? Yeah. So these are the signs, they might avoid eye contact, may prefer to be alone, difficulty expressing gestures, insistence on sameness. Yeah, spins objects, prevalence you'll come to know from any which ways you go to the website, you'll see. Now, one thing, yes, even in my caseload, I can say that. Mute. Who has unmuted themselves? Can you please mute yourself? Who is it? Okay. Let me mute her. Okay. Yeah. So 4 to 5 times it's more common in boys than girls. And certain genetic and hormonal factors have been implicated in the same, but nothing has been said for sure yet. Yeah. Autism spectrum disorder are seen in children of all cultures, race, and religion. Now, why this line is important? Because you need to understand that, I couldn't afford a good food while my child, when I had conceived my child. When I had conceived my child, even the richest people, you have so many Arabs who have their children in the spectrum and they have all the money in the world. So it doesn't depend on which religion you are, which strata you are. Autism is autism. Yeah. As I said, they have varying intelligence level, normal, and also many a times high intelligence in some children. Okay. Autism spectrum can do well in settings. Now, this is very important, which are adapted to suit their needs. And this is needed both at home and in the school environment. Now, I'll tell you, I have 3 kids at the age range of 4, similar mild to moderate autism diagnosis coming to me for remediation. Can you believe it? All of them are of the same age. Now, in case if you see a neurotypical child, what a teacher would do, that she would teach the same thing to all these 3 children. For me, teaching all these 3 children in the same age group with the same diagnosis, it's an altogether different experience. The content is different because everybody is at a different level. Their cognition is different. Their understanding is different. Their reaction is different. So it is a very customized therapy that needs to be provided to your child. So beware of, when special educators or remedial educators, they say, let's have a group, I'll teach them in group. Once a week group therapy works for social inclusion. But if you're taking a remedial therapy or specialized therapy, it has to be tailored tailored as per the child's need. So please remember this, my dear friends. Yeah. Prevalence, this is repeated. Now, I want you all to pay special attention to this particular slide. Okay. And I want a couple of you to answer also, unmute and answer. Yeah. So I want you all to answer. I had to unmute this. Now remember, if we have ever talked to a young child on the phone, now I'm talking not about autistic child, I'm talking about a neurotypical child. We may have encountered the following situation. Now, how many of you agree to this situation? When you see it, raise your digital hand. What are you doing, Denzel? Father asks. And what is the child doing? Playing with this. So he's actually showing a car. Do you all remember something when you have neurotypical children, or you've seen neurotypical children, or you remember your childhood? Yeah, Doreen gives me a thumbs up. That's what a little one does, right? What are you doing? So, I'm playing with this and you're on a phone call, not even on a video call. What does that say? The 3-year-old child whose father is calling up and he says that, this is what I'm playing with, and he's not even mentioning car. What does that say? That 3-year-old does not have this understanding that my father can't see what I'm seeing. That says as simple as this, that he cannot understand that I can see a car, but my father can't see a car. And that's the reason when we were young, our parents used to scare us by saying, "So jao, bhoot aa jayega." And what did we do? We believed it. Whatever they said, we believed it. We did not have that reason, yes, bhoot thodi kuch hota hai. I have never seen a bhoot. So These are the things that why I'm asking this question is we'll come to that point. So now you can totally empathize with Denzel, right? Because he is a toddler. He doesn't know. He tells his dad, I'm playing with this. So what is happening with Denzel? Denzel hasn't yet figured out that he needs to give his dad extra information about what he is doing because his dad can't see what he's holding. Denzel thinks his dad sees and thinks the same thing he does. The understanding. Please make a note of this. If you want to copy, please copy because autism is based on theory of mind. The understanding that people don't share the same thoughts and feelings as you do develops during childhood and is called theory of mind. Can you all see your children in that space? They do not understand the gestures that you give because for them, whatever they think is what. I'm requesting participants to stay on mute, please. Yeah. So I want you all to make a note of this. That what is this understanding? The understanding that people don't share the same thoughts and feelings as you do develops during childhood and is called theory of mind. Another way to think about it is a child's ability to tune into other people's perspectives. You all have one child in the spectrum in your house. Isn't it the common concern you have? Nahi samajhta. You know, many parents, they end up saying, Miss, that day मेरा हाथ कट गया था, खून निकल रहा था, मैं रो रही थी, मेरा बच्चा वहां कार से खेल रहा था. And because the parent does not know what is autism, she feels so cheated, she feels so hurt because she has devoted her entire life, she has left a successful career just to be with the child. Unfortunately, she doesn't know what is autism. Now, we all know that that child was not a mean child. He was not a bad child. It's just that he cannot understand that if it's bleeding, mother is crying, probably she's hurt. He might even get the emotions, but he doesn't know that I am supposed to go and tell her it's okay. And what do we expect? We expect them to react like us. So many a times, you know, we forget that they are a different personality. And we expect them to react the way we react in social situations. And that's where they are lacking, my dear friends. But when they don't react like this, that doesn't mean they don't love us. They can understand. Why do we say? The first thing I tell parents, reduce your anxiety, reduce your anxiety. You know, they can feel your anxiety. They can sense your anxiety. If you are anxious and you're working with the child can feel your anxiety. So that is the reason you need to be low on anxiety when you're working with them. You have to be really happy when you're working with them. I'll give you a very beautiful example of a 4-year-old who comes to me for remediation. I had never heard him call Sarika because he's a selective mutism. He has selective mutism. That's what we have in autism. Selective mutism is something that when you want to talk, you will talk, or else you won't talk. That's selective mutism. I have never even heard him calling my name. Forget that. Whenever he used to enter my center, I used to bend down and try to give him a hug, because hug is also a way of sensory, you know, when you press them, if they like that senses, it helps them relax. So I like to give them a hug when they enter or when they go. So it helps them relax. If I see that they are happy with those kind of experiences. I used to say hi and I used to call his name, hi XYZ. And he used to not even look at me. He used to just run and go and sit where he's supposed to sit. He looked excited, but he never acknowledged my presence. One day, instead of his father, his aunt came for the session. And there was a transition. One child was going and he was entering. And I was looking down and I was clearing my table, you know. And I heard a feeble voice telling in Marathi, he said, hey, bag, Sarika teacher. And for a second, I just looked up and I'm like, whose voice is this? and it's a feeble voice. And I saw it was my student. He knows me by name. And the aunt told me that, while I was waiting outside, he gave me an entire tour of this is the doorbell. Here you have to stand. So that's the beauty of their emotion. This child, he's non-verbal. At 10 o'clock in the night, he couldn't speak well. But if he had any upset, he used to tell his parent, point, take this, rickshaw ghe, Sarika teacher. Rickshaw ghe matlab, rickshaw, in Marathi it says, let's take a rickshaw. In Mumbai suburbs, we have a lot of rickshaw running. And he used to say, Sarika teacher. And the parent used to say, कि 10 वाजता 10 o'clock को मैं तुझे कहाँ लेकर जाऊँ सारिका टीचर के पास. So what I'm trying to say, my dear friends, I'm trying to express as a therapist that see the amount of love they have. It's just that their expression is different. If the parent wouldn't have shared that with me, right, I wouldn't have known. And this is just not one example. There are other examples which I hear from beautiful parents. Even Pallavi has examples to share, and those examples, it warms up a therapist, but it also tells you that they have emotions. They have different ways to express. We have to be patient to get there and see what they are actually thinking. Yeah. So theory of mind is something that if you don't have any takeaway from today, I want you all to have theory of mind. Now, I want all of you to imagine this, okay? And some of you to unmute and answer. Imagine you're handed a box of your favorite candy, okay? When you open the box, you see that it is filled with pencils. Everybody clear? I had a box of candy. I gave it to, you opened that box of candy. It looked very promising. And when you opened, you found there are a lot of pencils in that instead of candy. Now, if let's say Jennifer is my friend, okay? And Jennifer discovered a box of candy. She opened, she saw a lot of pencils in that. Now, suddenly Natasha came, and Natasha is Jennifer's friend, right? Natasha, if your friend suddenly came into the room and saw the closed box with pictures of candy on it, what would he or she think was inside? Jenny, what do you think? If Natasha is your friend, she saw that box of candy, what do you think Natasha would have thought?
Natasha also would have thought that inside there is a candy.
Right? We all agree with Jenny's answer that if Natasha enters the room and she sees a box, so now what do we know from here? Now, what happens with a toddler? If a similar situation happens with a toddler, what do they feel? If a toddler opens this box and he sees pencil and he closes the box, and let's say if Natasha is that toddler and Natasha's friend comes in and I ask Natasha, what do you think your friend saw in that box? What do you think your friend will think? Natasha will say, Natasha, what will you say? You're a 3-year-old.
Oh, pencils.
Yes. Natasha will
Pencils,
say pencils because
that's what I saw. Yeah.
Yes, because that's their truth. Whatever they saw is their truth. And as we grow up, we start understanding other people's belief. We know that there are false beliefs. Now, this is where our children in the spectrum stop. They cannot read your mind. They cannot understand. You tell them, we are going, many times people use as reinforcement. You finish this work and I will take you to the mall. They actually believe it. Whatever may be their age. You've told them you finish this work and I'll take you to mall, and you don't do it. And then if you experience a meltdown, it is not the child to be blamed. It is you who's to be blamed. Because they do not understand. See, if I tell my son right now that, you better finish this and we'll go for a long trip, he's gonna say, हाँ, मम्मा ना सारा काम करा लेगी और कहीं लेके नहीं जाएगी. Because my son has understood, his theory of mind has developed that, okay, there are false beliefs. People, not necessary, whatever people say, they do the exact same thing. But this is what gets stopped in a child in the spectrum. They do not understand that. Whatever you say is the ultimate truth for them. And they believe on it. So please be very mindful. And that's why when parents expect कि अरे मेरा हाथ कट गया और वो रोया नहीं, वो नहीं समझेगा. Okay? Because this is something that is not developed in them. And that's the reason, if you see, that is one of the source for the communication and the behavior disorder. That's theory of mind. So what is theory of mind? What stops them? Because of developed theory of mind, what one can do, understand why people do and say things they do. Autism, we know it's already opposite. They cannot understand what people say or why they do. Have a conversation. Tell a story. Now, these are the challenges. They cannot have a conversation. Like if today I see Frenia and Frenia is in pain, okay? And I will not say, Frenia, what a lovely day today. Because I can see that Frenia is in pain. So I will not go and tell Frenia. But if I am in the spectrum, and that's how I've been trained, that whenever I see and I tell them, how are you feeling? What a lovely day. Probably I'll look at Frenia and I'm going to say the same thing. I will totally ignore what are Frenia's expression. Because for me, this is what I have learned. So that's why having a conversation is difficult for a child in the spectrum, because they cannot understand the gestures. They cannot understand the hidden communication. Tell a story. Now, they have not seen a fox. They have not seen a grapes. They have not seen a fox jumping for the grapes. And then we ask them to narrate a story. They cannot do that. Yeah. Even if they're able to do it, then my dear friends, it's an alarm that they're just doing it with their rote memory. They do not understand with what's happening. Yeah. Understand characteristics, perspectives in storybooks. And that's the reason, don't you all commonly see when you say, when I read story to my child cannot understand. It's a common complaint. So can you see, theory of mind is so important for your communication, for your language, for how you perceive the world. And that is something that is not developed in them. So can we teach them the same way we teach other children? No. We have to have different ways to teach them. Make friends. Now, the saddest part is, for new members, I don't know, I have created a book called as All About Me. That All About Me is, how children learn about themselves through a book, rather than, learning that my name is Sarika, I am a girl, I am 10 years old, I live in Mumbai, my favorite food is pav bhaji. Instead of that, I've created into a book, a visual, where the child can read. And trust me, at least 10 books I have seen so far. And most of the time, the blank pages, my friend is. That's almost every time that has been a blank page, my friend is. Now we know why do they face challenge, right? Because of theory of mind not being developed. Engage in pretend play. Now, have a car. What they have a car? Lining it up. They are not playing the natural way. Yeah. Even if that lining up, you change the order, it might cause a meltdown. They might not like it. Right? They have something like a string and they just want to do this. And you would say, is that even a game to play? Many of you might have seen that they rotate things. You give anything and that thing ends up into a rotation. And you would wonder, arey yaar, I bought this, that's a Fisher Price toy. And look at my son or my daughter. How is she dealing with it? She doesn't even know how to play it. The only reason is they cannot engage in pretend play. So this slide is one of the most important slide. If you want to get an access to your child's life, please remember this at the back of your mind, that they do not perceive the way you perceive. They do not understand what you think the way it should be, right or wrong. They have their own understanding. They have their own rights and wrongs. Yeah. Now, what I will do is, I will invite questions here. But before that, I just want to finish what I had to show. And then I will invite questions. And let's say, I think the more you get involved in this, the more you answer everybody, the more you will learn out of everybody's sharing. Now, this is a preferred core team. As I always say, you all are here. That means you all have got a diagnosis for your child. The diagnosis must have come from a pediatric, a neurologist, a child psychiatrist, or a developmental pediatrician. And these are the few people who can help you with getting the diagnosis for your child. The first one. Okay, so now you guys are already here. Now, what happens is, as I clearly said, two things you have to remember. It's not a disease. It cannot be treated. On the group also, you might be seeing so many messages when people say, homeopathic kya hai, Ayurvedic karaya kya, acupressure karaya kya, ye karaya kya. See, I don't say they are wrong, but how will it work? My child in autism, with autism, has a comorbid, matlab it exists together. My child has a comorbid condition of attention issue, which is ADHD. He is too hyperactive. So I can take a medication to soothe his nerves for anxiety or attention, but I cannot take medications to treat autism. As many of you know, they have gut issues. So for gut issues, you can take medicines that can help them ease out with the gut issues. But your homeopathic, if you hear claims, as far as I know, see, there was a lot of claim about stem cell therapy. People who have been following this group, they've always seen me, vocalizing my voice against that. And I always said that I feel it didn't work. One day that I feel that I said was actually announced by the government that it is not helping your child at all. Yeah. So there is something called as stem cell therapy. Then there is something called as that oxygen treatment. Now you want to get it done, you get it done. But I always say you can save that 3 lakh, invest it in therapies. I shared in the group few days ago, if you guys have read, that with one of the parent, when I was sharing this, because he had invested a lot of money in stem cell therapy and oxygen treatment, and he had stopped all the occupational therapy, which he really thought helped the child. When I told him, rather he is asking me that, do you therapists have a vested interest कि stem cell therapy की वजह से आपका business नहीं चलेगा? Now I really had no answer for that. Trust me, there are so many children with spectrum out in the market with the high diagnosis that therapists are full. See, we are working and we have sufficient caseload. But as parents, you need to understand. See, earlier, there were people in the group who used to, they used to have a conversation that Sarika, stem cell therapy works. Stem cell therapy works. We have done it. Five times they've done stem cell therapy for their child, which is around 5 to 6 lakhs. What if you would have saved that money and kept it in fixed? See, therapy, why do they need it? Now you all saw theory of mind. Now tell me, as a parent, do you have an access to break that theory of mind? Are you trained enough to break that pattern that the child has? And if that theory of mind is not broken, how are you going to help your child learn? How will he develop pretend play? How will he learn storytelling? How will he learn communication? So that's why I say, if you are a therapist, you can very well take care of your child. But if you're not, you need the right approach. Now, an occupational therapist cannot do speech therapy. An occupational therapist is supposed to do only occupational therapy. I am a special educator. I cannot give you speech therapy. I can only give you remedial education. Can you see within our fields also, we cannot interchange our roles because everybody is trained to work differently. Now, what could be your core team? Your core team, the minute you get the diagnosis, though I'm a special educator, I tell you, the minute you get the diagnosis, the first therapy that you need to start is occupational therapy. Why occupational therapy? Your child has a lot of sensory issues. You might have observed that uncontrolled crying, touch, not happy with few touches, texture of the clothes, change in weather, change in environment, change in sound, food not eaten, they don't like a particular texture of the food. Now, these are all sensory issues. I don't want to go into depth because that itself is a big topic. Those sensory issues, that's where an occupational therapist would help you. One part of it, which is called as sensory integration. Now, if the senses are not in integration, no therapy works. So that's the reason the first place you need to go is an occupational therapist. Speech therapist, of course, you can go. It is, you can see what works, what it doesn't work. Remedial educator, or basically a special educator, start by the age your child is 4, 3.5 and 4. Now, why I tell you? Because they are visual learners. Obviously, as parents, you think, क्या है, पढ़ाना ही है ना, हमने पढ़ाया है खुद के बच्चे को भी, या हमने अपने छोटे भाई को पढ़ाया है, एजुकेशन है, कौन सी बड़ी बात है, यूट्यूब पे हमने देख लिया थोड़ा वीडियोस, हमने पढ़ा दिया. Generally we end up thinking that education is something that we know. But my dear friend, it's wrong. You don't know to teach them. Reason being, there is a concept like a first grader came to me in the beginning of first grade. Okay, the parent told me that Sarika ma'am, in maths he is such an expert, he can do such additions. I said great, and he immediately not a 2-digit one, I'm sorry, immediately this is what the mother gave me that example, and I saw the child making those lines and then these lines and then counting, and he wrote 11, right? And I said, okay, very good. Then I gave few blocks to the child, as I shared in the beginning also. I asked, okay, whatever was his name, I said XYZ, can you give me 5 pieces? You know how it went? I gave him a box. Imagine these are blocks, and I don't have blocks right now, but I'm just telling you. So how did he start counting? I said, give 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm like, stop. I only asked for 5 pieces. Try again. 1, 2. What does that show? The child is doing things from his rote memory, his muscle memory. Is he applying his brain? Is he thinking? He's not thinking. So when that mother showed me that 7 plus 2 is 9, what was he using? I told you, right? They are very good visual learners. So he was using his muscle memory. He has been taught कि 7 देखा तो आपको गिन के यहाँ पे 7 lines बनाने हैं, 4 देखा तो 4 बनाना है, इसको count करना है. But in practical life, when I ask him to give me 4, or I give him 4 balls and I give him 3 balls and I tell him how many balls, he wouldn't be able to bring it together and say 7 balls. So that's the reason, my dear friend. Now, if your child, as I was in my previous one, I said, if they come at 4 years, that is the time even at school, okay, 3.54, that is the time at the school when these concepts have been taught. Now, if you get a different access of them to teach them the right way, where they understand and do it, what happens is the gap between their academic level is different. It's less. But versus you come at 7 years, and there is exactly the same case in my class, a worksheet that my 4-year-old can do, who's now 4.5, cannot be done by a 7-year-old who have a similar kind of diagnosis of mild autism. The only reason was she started her special education now, 2 months ago when she turned 8. Versus this boy who's been doing it from 4.5. Now, how does it help you economically? Economically, now this parent might have to go for 3 remedial sessions. And still the progress might be slow compared to this 4.5 who's already performing at his class level. Now, when his school reopened, the auntie was telling me that the teacher told me he's writing and he's answering. Versus last year, like just 2 months ago, they were not giving him even a report card saying we don't know whether we want to, retain him in the school or not. Anyways, the child was coming to me. The parents were aware of right to education. So nothing happened to the child. But that's what I'm asking you all to see the difference. Because the therapies that made on that child, the first day of the school and the teacher says that, I saw him writing and he was asking me questions. So this is the power of therapy. Please don't stay under this impression कि ये मैं खुद से manage कर लूंगी. In the group I had written once, depending on what you can afford, please have a guided one. Please at least take a home program from somebody who can give you corrections कि ये आप सही कर रहे हो, ये आप गलत कर रहे हो. Rather than just being, going on YouTube and deciding, अच्छा ये उसके साथ work किया या वो उसके साथ work किया. So these are the core team. Yeah. ASD can be cured with diet or other. Let's see how many of you will people believe ASD can be cured with diet or other alternative treatments. Is it a myth or it's truth? Come on, tell me everybody. You can unmute and say. Do you all think it's a myth or do you all think that ASD can be cured with diet? Feel free to share your opinion. No, you won't be judged.
It's a myth.
100%.
It's a myth.
The minute you hear the word that somebody says miraculously curing the ASD, That's your first sign to take a U-turn. How dare that person say cure ASD? Yeah. People with ASD do not feel or like to socialize. I've shared so many stories that I know that you all know it's a myth. Children with ASD do socialize and feel emotions, but the communication and the expression of those emotions is atypical. Atypical meaning different than the rest. Their desire to socialize with people might not be as intense as it is in typically developing children. Nevertheless, older children, adolescents, and young adults with ASD do enjoy interacting with other children and adolescents. Now, last month, we had a talk by Fatima. If you all were still part of that group, you all have remembered seeing her. If you're not part of it, then you can always Google for her son, Usaid Sheikh. What Fatima told us that when he was diagnosed with moderate autism. And now Usaid is just all over the place, dancing with the neurotypicals, playing drums, working for different organizations. Yeah, working for different organizations. So when they grow up, they do enjoy. And also being a part of the school team, I have seen my children in the spectrum, when they are in the classroom with their peers, they are very happy. They might not be talking to them, but they like to be around them. And that's why we say, when a child in the spectrum needs to go into an inclusive school, the only reason is they enjoy to be around their peers. Please do not send them to special school unless and until the case is very, very severe. You should try to stop an autistic child's repetitive behavior, which is stimming. And I already said no. The important issue here is to understand the function of that repetitive behavior. Sometimes children engage in repetitive behavior because they are bored, stressed, or playing. Also, there is no treatment to modify that. It is something that is their biological need. Again, whatever I said is here. Should they attend special needs program? No, unless and until if they are very severe, they still need to be a part of. So Barnali says, how do we decide special or inclusive school? So Barnali, that you will have to take from a professional who can tell you, you probably asking just a question because there are so many signs that a professional has to see and observe. So go get hold of a good special educator where you're staying and ask your special educator to guide you through Barnali. Children with autism cannot become independent adults. As I already shared, it's a myth. We have so many successful autistic people around. Yeah, it's a myth. They can become independent adults. Now, I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to take you back to that old slide. Now, I want you all to, now this is the last leg where it will be like an open session where we will be talking about it. Now, before I go to that question answers, anybody has any question in mind? They want to ask something?